All right, good evening. Greetings and welcome back once again. All praise be to the Most High. This is Amuna Yisrael. All right, we got feedback. Hold on. Um, I'm just gonna go ahead and get into it. Today has taken a curveball, and I had this article that I wanted to kind of read collectively, and if I let it go too far, tomorrow I'm gonna be busy. Most likely, it looks like Monday I'm gonna be busy. So I said, let me go ahead and get this in before I lose it to the flood of other things in my thought processes. So again, thank you for those who just joined us, all the new subscribers. Shout out to you. This is gonna be my evening voice, so hopefully you'll bear with me. This article, I put the link in the box, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Again, this is continual left project homework, ADOS homework, just putting some information on the table. I've had a recent discussion. It was pretty cool to be able to have a discourse and hear people's thoughts real time. And I know I said I wanted to have something of that nature on this channel, and so much is happening. So much is happening. So hopefully I'll be able to facilitate that soon. But in the meantime, between time, I'm going to share my screen here. And thank you for those who, hey, peace Israelite, man, how you doing? For those who just joined us, again, I'm still on, sometimes we move quickly off of subjects. I'm the type that I'll be like, if you see my R. Kelly research, like I exhaust the subject, not necessarily in the way that some do, but just looking for deeper understanding for the subject. And so I'm still kind of on the first point. Shout out to those who left comments in the comment section. One particular was like, do more research, because they didn't think I had a clue. It was really driven on my first video, my first impression. And people don't understand what a first impression is. The first impression is, we don't know at what point of the discussion someone's going to come in. I usually like to, as you see, do my research just based on what someone asked me of the movement and my first impression. I did that video. As you have been seeing since from then till now, I'm going to continue to do what I have been doing for years and sharing publicly for years, is the Left Project. Okay. And so this is very interesting. This speaks to a conversation or a thought process that many have been sharing, that after the atrocities, after the selling away from the continent, in whatever form or fashion, because again, that's another hazy area that needs to be addressed, of how exactly that went down and how it looked, because the way in which we are retelling the story is not historically accurate either. But there's a narrative going around that Caribbean, neither mainland continent peoples tried to help melanated people in America during their issues, during the point of their oppression, which is not true. So in this particular case, a sister, shout out to Sister Only Love, shared this article. I thought this was really cool to read actually together. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm just learning about this particular woman as you're learning about her. Okay, so let me see here. And shortly it says the 1928 assassination of a Ghanaian prophetess who moved to the U.S. to return blacks to Africa. I'll read that again. She was assassinated in 1928. She was from Ghana. She was a prophetess, they're saying, and she moved to America from Ghana in 1928 into Jim Crow region, into convict leasing town, into the very heart of the oppression of those who were sold from those very coasts up until 50, 70, 100 years before this time. And she comes here to the Americas to, let's read about it. Let's read about it. Let's see what she comes here to do. This is her gravestone. It's called In Memory of Princess Laura Adokor Kufi, affectionately known as Mother Kufi, the martyred African princess of Asofa, Ghana, Gold Coast, West Africa, assassinated in the pulpit on March 8th, 1928 in Miami, Florida. And they have a verse here, let not your heart be troubled. She's the founder of the African Universal Churches. Let's, one second before I get to reading here. You already know what the knock is. Hold on one second. For those who just joined us, let me open. Give me one second, and I'll be right back. All right, thank you for your patience. I am back. All right, we're gonna any questions or comments, feel free to leave it in the box. We're gonna get it back to the article now. Oh, hold on. So this is a woman who's famously known, who came from the continent to come to America. And let's read. In 1918, after supposedly, this is in face-to-face Africa, receiving a vision from God to move to the United States and help the African American community return to the promised land of Africa, Laura Adokor Kufi left everything in Ghana and moved to the United States to start her duty as a God sent, it says, prophet to the Blacks in diaspora. This is a picture that they have of Laura Adokor Kufi. Popularly known as Mother Kufi or Mama Laura, she was born in Accra around 1893, as indicated on her gravestone. Also written on her gravestone in Old Jacksonville City Cemetery is the little princess, which suggests she was of royal lineage from a Ghana community called Asofa. And they have the gravestone here. The book Africa in Florida, 500 Years of African Presence in the Sunshine State. Now you know that's going to have to be a book I got to look at. Written by Vilbert White, records that Laura was from Kumasi and of Ashanti heritage. However, this is heavily disputed as her name Adoko is a proper Ghanaian name. It goes on to say, soon after moving to the US, Laura settled in Detroit and became a close associate of Marcus Garvey, who started a Negroes movement and gained a huge following. She was soon appointed as National Field Director for Garvey's Universal Negro Improvement Association. While working with Garvey, Laura became a prominent spokesperson with the Universal Negro, the UNIA, and soon became the most popular member, according to this article. So, of course, this is the first time I'm really getting this information. So, I'm going to dig in more, see what I can find, but this is the overview. Laura was sent on a mission to address tens of thousands of people she was able to pull. After Marcus' arrest for mail fraud in 1925, Laura gained more popularity and encouraged African Americans to return home. Unfortunately, after his release, the two had a fallout, and Marcus started to describe her as a fake and constantly appealing for her arrest. Feeling that her life was in danger, especially after the release of Marcus Garvey, Laura resigned from UNIA and relocated to Jacksonville, where she felt safer and more welcomed. In 1927, Laura had gained major popularity in the US among African Americans and was widely known as the prophet from Africa. In 1927, she established the African Universal Church, now known as St. Adorka's African Universal Church, which gained a massive following after it opened. And there goes the sign. Through her church and with her role as warrior, sorry, warrior mother of Africa's warrior of, hold on one second. Hold on one second. Sorry about that. Hold on, let me get back the screen. Here we go. It says here, through her church and with her role as the warrior mother of Africa, Warriors of the Most High, God, a title she gave herself, as has the church, Laura preached about Africa as the promised land and why African Americans should make the trip back home. In several of her sermons, Laura spoke about the reasons why all over the world needed to unite and return to Africa to develop their community. Rather than make their toil and sweat profit the lands their ancestors were first to work on under harsh conditions for several years. Okay. And this is a picture of her. So she was joined with Garvey, for those who just joined us. According to the narrative, she joined with Garvey, was working with Garvey, was a field coordinate, fell out with Garvey, continued, moved to Florida, and started a church and telling the people that she had a vision that they should go back. So this is the continent, one woman reaching out and reaching thousands of people here on the mainland and embracing them to a certain degree and showing them and telling them and encouraging them that they should go back home. For a little over a year, Laura pulled in a huge African American crowd who were grateful to hear about Africa and its wonders from an African. Her sermons and speeches spread a new wave across the states and some parts of the Caribbean. On March 8, 1928, Laura was killed during a speech while addressing a crowd of over 5,000 people at a church in Miami where she had not visited since she left. During her sermon, she was speaking about the power of God to help Africans and Black Americans. Laura was shot in the head minutes after telling her bodyguard to take a seat while she continued her speech to the people. Her death caused an uproar which led to the instant death of Maxwell Cook, a Jamaican known for being a Garvey supporter who is believed to have been the killer. As punishment, Maxwell was beaten to death by the crowd. Her body was carried off to Jacksonville, where she was buried in her honor. A small settlement close to her church was built and named Adorcaville. The story of Laura Adorkor Kofi and how she moved from Ghana to the United States with the main mission of making the Blacks return home is definitely an intriguing one that leaves many to ask several questions, like how she managed to make the relocation with ease, the life she led before moving to the States, and who ordered her killing. Let me know if you've ever heard this story before. I tried to look up some more information. What I did find, let's see here. But then, a lot of the deeper information is kind of locked. So I think it was the New York Library. I think it's the Schomburg has some has some has her some of her information. They have some letters, some correspondences that I found, but I wasn't able to read them. Again, this is just a really overview. There was another article, but when you, the New York Public Library, hold on. The New York Public. See, archives, if you do New York Public Library, Laura Adorkor Kofi, and you click on archives, this is how, this is just really preliminary, but you will see in the archives and manuscripts, the creator was this person, Richard Newman, and this is the call number, and it's a half a box that has within it, which would be very interesting to look at. It gives a little overview of her. I'll read it here. Laura Adorkor Kofi was born in 1875 outside of Accra in present-day Ghana. She immigrated to the U.S. in the mid-1920s, appears to have settled in Detroit for a time. Kofi claimed to have come at her father, King Knepsey's request. So that's new information. This is the person who, I hope I said his name right, to encourage African Americans to move to Africa. Again, we heard that no one came. We heard that no one helped. We heard that no one died. We heard that no one's bones are buried here. We heard that these are the reasons why we should be, take the position that we're taking. I'm still on that note, but let's continue. So according to what's in the New York Public Library archives and manuscripts, she came at her father, King Knepsey's request to encourage African Americans to move to Africa. Although her African parentage has been proven, the details of her life before she joined Marcus Garvey's UNIA are unknown. In 1926, Kofi moved from Detroit to Florida and became active in the Miami division of UNIA. At this time, Garvey was in prison, and problems arose when Kofi acted without his authorization. She collected funds from UNIA members, ostensibly to purchase a sawmill to send to Africa and to provide African Americans passage to Africa. Because he believed she was taking advantage of his followers, Garvey publicly disassociated the UNIA from Kofi in 1927. In addition, UNIA officials accused Kofi of being a fraud. Among other accusations, they claimed she was born in Georgia. Which that's why I say I need to see more. This is interesting. An eloquent speaker, Kofi rapidly acquired a large following, including many Garveyites. In order to organize her followers, she established the African Universal Church, AUC, in 1927. The church placed Garvey ideology of Black nationalism within a religious framework, stressing community advancement. On March 8, 1928, Kofi was shot and killed while addressing a group of her followers in Miami. The UNIA was suspected of the murder, but nothing was ever proven. Kofi's followers continued to maintain the AUC in the memory of their leader. After her death, the AUC established branches in New York, Alabama, and Georgia, and in recent years, the number of AUC congregations has diminished. The details of this biographical note were primarily drawn from Newman's article. And then they go on to tell you he has an essay, so I guess I'm going to go look for this essay. Warrior Mother of Africa's Warrior of the Most High, God, Lori Kufi and the Universal Church. So I guess we'll get more information from that article. I guess I'll have to look it up next time. And this is what's in the files. If you go down here, it gives you the file number. Some of this stuff you have to be on location to kind of go in there and request some of this stuff. So according to what's in the box, the writings are first Laura Kufi and the African Universal Church. They have drafts of a letter, and then they have research files, grant research application clippings, telegrams, the church, handwritten notes, and correspondences. So this is what you would find in the box if you were in that area, if you were interested in learning more about her life. Laura Adokar Kufi. So then here goes another one. And I know sometimes we like to say things and then discount things and say it's nominal and the numbers don't add up. And see, this is the problem we get into when we try to paint a narrative that's not historically, hey, Chris, what's going on? Well, that's not historically accurate. And, you know, it would be better to acknowledge the contribution of those who came before. It would be great to see what worked and what didn't work, to be honest about who helped and didn't help. I'm almost at the end of the book, The River Flows On, and it speaks about many things, which I'm just going to have to come and kind of break it down a little bit. But it does speak about, and I've said it before, that after the revolution, I don't know if I've said it before, maybe I was just trying to, Don Smith, welcome to the discussion. Maybe I was just trying to gather the information, but I'll give you a little update. But for her, I'm going to do more research on her. If I was in New York, I would definitely try to check out the library clippings. But I'm just going to have to try to kind of look and see what has been written. I did read something, but I wasn't able to substantiate something that they were saying Garvey said in regard to her. So I'm going to continue more on that. But as it relates to other people who were helping, there was a clip out of Thomas Jefferson's notes on a Virginia planter, in which he's going back and forth with, hold on one second. I'm just going to give y'all a little preview now because it's late. Now we got work tomorrow. But he's going back and forth with James Madison, if I'm not mistaken, right? And they're having a problem with the so-called uprisings, okay, and the resistance. And so, and I found the letters online as well. They have all of these correspondences that you can read, and I read them because I was like, oh, wow, he's responding. Who is he responding to and what's happening? So, yeah, James Monroe, not Madison, my apologies. James Monroe and Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, are going back and forth. And James Monroe raises the concern of what to do with the Negroes. If you kill off, there were laws that if you killed someone's quote property, enslaved property, that you would have to compensate them. So they was trying to come up with schemes for those who kept rebelling, how to get monies for them and not necessarily have to kill them. So they were talking about shipping them out of the colony. They were talking about sending them to a certain place, where can you send them? So concerning who else helped, this is a note that was written, and I will give more at another time, but this was written in November 24th of 1801. When asked, where can we put them? Where can we send them? Can we send them west of Ohio? This is all the questions, right? So later on, Jefferson says to Monroe, could we procure land beyond the limits of the U.S. to form a receptacle for these people? The dissidents, those who don't want to be enslaved. And this is still during slavery. Can we get a place like, where can we put them? He later goes on to say, the West Indies offer a more probable and practical retreat for them, inhabited already by a people of their own race and color, climates congenial with their natural constitution, insulated from other descriptions of men. Nature seems to have formed these islands to become the receptacle of the blacks transported into this hemisphere. So early on, they were trying to say, where are we going to dump these people? He goes on to say, whether we could obtain from European sovereigns of those islands. Keep in mind, we already showed here that many of the people that first furnished the colonies early in the 1600s were coming from the Caribbean, because slavery, as it relates to America, the mainland was the last to get slaves. It was South America, it was the Caribbean, and then the mainland got the lease. And they started the mainland with those bodies who were enslaved in the Caribbean. He goes on to say, whether we can obtain from European sovereigns of those islands leave to send thither the persons under consideration. He says, I cannot say, but I think it more probable than the former proposition because of them being already inhabited more or less by the same race. So he's like, no, don't send them west. They still going to be around here. I think you should send them to the islands, or we should send them to the islands. Remember, they had the colonial project where they were trying to see, should they send them to Liberia? Should they send them to Sierra Leone? Should they send them to Nova Scotia? Okay. It says here, the most promising portion of them, listen to this, is the island of Santo Domingo, which is Haiti, where the blacks are established into a sovereignty de facto, because they fought off the French, and have organized themselves under regular laws and government. Keep in mind, very shortly after this, I can read more, but I just wanted to again highlight some of the inaccuracies that have been said. This is Thomas Jefferson, the president of the United States, saying, where are we going to put these people who, where are we going to shove them to? Who are we going to pawn them off on? And later on, this is in 1801, Haiti actually, in about, I think it's a little bit later on, a few years later, opened the doors. And we're going to talk about that, to thousands of melanated people here who were freedmen or who were in the North to come to Haiti. They paid for their transit. They paid for their passage. They gave them, I think it's 3 acres of land and tools to begin farming, to say, hey, come to this free, because it was the only melanated, as he said here, free sovereign place that was in the West. So when someone continues to say that no one helped, we just read about, which I didn't know about, and like I said, I want to learn more about her, Laura Adukor Kofi, who later on, because we're talking about 1800 years, so this is 1800s, the whole situation with Santo Domingo, Haiti happens, and then 100 plus, 120 years, give or take, later, she comes from the continent to say she has a vision, and I read that in another place, that says she has a vision that she's supposed to help the melanated people in the mainland America and the diaspora in the Caribbean to go back to where you came from. So again, not sure where we're getting some of this information from, but I wanted to just give you that. The article is in the box. I'm gonna try to see if I can get any kind of access to these archived clippings, because they say they have here. They say they have here pamphlets, clippings, and newspaper clippings, photocopies, telegraphs, and things of that nature. So I don't know how I'm gonna get access to this here. I don't know if they have it scanned or what. So I gotta do a little bit more digging. It's at the Schomburg Center. Access to materials. Some material collections held by the Manuscripts Archives or Rare Book Division of the Schomburg Center are held off-site and requested in advance. Please check the catalog to request access in Manuscript Archives. All right. I got to request access to the collection now, y'all. They got the joint on the lock and key. So, thank you for tuning in. Like I said, I just wanted to come and drop that. There are some other things that are in the news today that I had for last week, but then last week I got busy, you know what I'm saying, making that healthy vegan food. Last week got busy, so wait, I got a little bit of time. What time is it? There was something else I wanted to share that I saw come out, and I might as well just go ahead and talk about it real quick. How's everybody doing today? Hopefully we keep it up to date. We keep it sharp with our information. We're learning. We're growing together. No one person can do it all. There was article. I think I want to read this one quickly so that I can just take one more off my list here. Which is about the woman who is suing. I believe it's Harvard. Oh, before I do that one, I had shared this one I wanted to share real quick. So let me get this one. There's another thought about no one coming, no one else helping, and all this other stuff. But here we go. Here's another one that Barbados. Remember we wrote about the Geechee and where they were coming from. We read that a couple of sessions ago. Barbados to welcome the Queen of the Gullah Geechee, and her name is Queen Quet. I did some research on her some time ago, but this was just last week, March 18th. Barbados to welcome the Queen of Gullah Geechee Nation. This is in the Charleston Chronicle. And yeah, hopefully you're abreast with the plight that's happening with the Gullah Geechee. They have been able in times past to retain a lot of their culture and a lot of the land, but in recent times, the land that they've had for centuries now is being taken back. So there's some information on that you might want to check out if you're not abreast on what's going on with them. But Queen Quet, chiefess of the Gullah Geechee Nation, will journey to the island of Barbados with co-founder of the Gullah Geechee Nation International Music and Movement Festival, Kwame Shah of All Productions. They have put out a global call for others of the Gullah Geechee diaspora and those that support the continuation of rich cultural African heritage of the islands to join them in a celebration on June 21st through the 23rd on the island of Barbados. Quet will not only be welcomed to Queen's Park in Bridgetown, Barbados, but also to the Barbados Museum and Historical Society. What did we learn about Barbados? Barbados was a testing ground. A lot of melanated bodies in the beginning were coming from Barbados and later on Jamaica, okay? And numerous communities actually traveled to make historic reconnections between the Gullah Geechee Nation and the nation of Barbados. Not only is the history of Bajan people and Gullah Geechee linked via the transatlantic slave trade, it is linked through the ongoing commodification of crops such as Sea Island cotton and of cultural heritage tourism. In addition, environmental sustainability of islands and preservation of cultural heritage will be explored during the journey through historic sites, musical and linguistic interactions, and culinary activities. And again, you can read more about it. I'll leave the link in the box. But this is in present day, those who are on the mainland continent acknowledging the connection that they have with the Caribbean and ultimately connection what they have and where the different places that they came from on the continent. So that was one article that I wanted to read. And there was another one, so I guess I'll just look it up right now. Because it's all over. It's Harvard. I think it's Harvard. Woman suing Harvard for slave picture. Yo, some of my Google search be crazy, but I know it's here it is. Here it is. It was NPR. It's on everything. It's on BBC. It's on NPR. Just pick one. I'm gonna pick NPR. Sometimes NPR be bringing some info. I'm gonna pick NPR. How about that? Or BBC. I could have picked either one. Harvard profits from photos of slaves lawsuit claims. So these are the two pictures. We know I've seen him before in my research. Not so, I don't remember so much. Yeah, I've probably seen her before as well. This is a sample image of Papa Renti and his daughter Belia, taken in 1850, are displayed during a press conference announcing a lawsuit against Harvard University on Wednesday in New York City. So again, this is last week. This is the 21st. The enslaved man's name was Renti. His image adorns the cover of a Harvard publication that the university sells for $40. Tamara Lanier says Papa Renti is the patriarch of her family, and in a lawsuit filed Wednesday, she says Harvard is using those photos without permission, and in so doing, profiting from photos taken by a racist profession determined to prove the inferiority. It's late. Inferiority of, quote, Black people. Lanier says that Harvard has no rightful claim to the images of Renti of his daughter Delia, forced to strip naked and pose for a demeaning pseudoscientific study. Lanier argues that in refusing to acknowledge Lanier's claim to the photos, Harvard is perpetuating, quote, perpetuating the systematic subversion of Black property rights that began during slavery and continued for centuries thereafter, end quote. Quote, slavery was abolished 150 years ago, but Renti and Delia remained enslaved in Cambridge, Massachusetts, end quote, the complaint states. Their images, like their bodies before, remained subject to control and appropriation by the powerful, and their familiar identities are denied to them. A Harvard spokesman said the university couldn't comment as it had not yet been served with the complaint, the Associated Press reported. Harvard is the latest school to face accusations that is benefiting from a racist past. In 2017, and we read about this one, Georgetown University apologized for selling 272 slaves in the early 1800s and promised to make reparations for offering the descendants of enslaved people an edge in admissions. And in 2016, Harvard Law School abandoned its official seal based on the crest of a slave owner whose endowment of land helped establish the school. Lanier's complaint alleges Harvard is still depriving the indirect profits of slavery. The claim is simple. Josh Kosef of Lanier's attorney told the Washington Post, "You took something, it doesn't belong to you, it belongs to me, and I want it back." End quote. The complaint tells the story of Lanier's family passed down from one generation to the next in oral tradition, starting with Renti, a slave in South Carolina who taught himself to read in defiance of state law. Lanier's juxtaposed her family history with that of Harvard, and its relationship with Professor Louis Agassiz. Okay, that's his name right there. The way Lanier tells it, Agassiz was obsessed with proving the superiority of white people shortly after the French natural scientists arrived at Harvard. He began to promote the theory of polygenesis. What is this? Polygenesis. It's like the now debunked idea that racial groups don't share a common origin. And here, I believe, is the picture. And it goes on, and I'm bugging out tonight. So feel free to read the rest of this article here. This one is the NPR article, and I believe BBC kind of says the same thing. Harvard sued by descendants of slaves for profiting from photos. So I will put these here. And that's her, Tamara Lanier. And so we're seeing more and more what we're seeing of concerning these reparations. It's a form of it, but you're seeing more and more people who have a direct name to call, a direct connection to be able to say, look, this is what you did, and here is where you did it. And they're going to specific people or specific institutions that are responsible and not necessarily the collective. You understand? And I think this is what makes a lot of these cases kind of different, is because they have somebody's name to call. You're welcome, Jason. It's not you all, it's you personally, first name, last name, addressing these people, and this is what you did. And as we continue to unpack this era, hopefully we will learn that there were so many, as many have already learned, that there were so many moving parts to this discussion, and so many places along the way, like I read some time ago about the Zong massacre, which had to do with a specific insurance company in England, right? It had to do with a specific ship owner. It had to do with all of these things that put the onus. Yes, slavery, many people, many countries, many people contributed. And so you have to kind of whittle it down. And I know it's difficult to say, okay, this person in this locale whose ancestors are still here today, who, like some people who still have the plantation houses. I'll show y'all one more thing. For those who just joined us, y'all know how, this is why I usually don't do late night videos, because so much stuff comes to my mind. But I just want to show y'all one thing. I said that like 3 times, but it's okay. All right, boom. For instance, Google, everybody likes Google, right? So today, you just pick a spot, right? And you say, yeah, people was enslaved, and maybe you're reading a book, maybe you're coming across some information, maybe you see a family name, you're like, oh, chill. Maybe you go down to the archives, the public library, maybe you check out microfilm, maybe you find your people all along the place. Then maybe you happen over to wherever it happened at, and you like, oh, chill, plantation houses. Do you see how many houses from plantations are still here? Okay. So you look at this, plantation tours, and you click on it, and you say South Carolina, and you found something, and you're like, and like I said the other day, I think somebody was telling me about historic site. When I talked about historic site, when I was doing the research years ago, I was looking into how they made these places historical sites, right? And you see that here on the side of these things, state historical site. But look how many plantations. The books that I'm reading, a lot of people will tell you who was their master, okay, what plantation they were on. And if you have this type of information and see it's still here today, now you have a lot more pieces to the crime scene, okay. So let me just click on anyone. Let's just click on. I think I read about the Beaufort plantation, but let's click here. Boom, this joint is still here. Red Cliff Plantation, Beach Island. Okay, it's still here. They got all these pictures of it. Timeline, 1855. It tells you the owner. Sometimes this stuff, the construction. It tells you who lived there. It tells you whose hands it changed to. Some of this stuff is in the state. Property added to National Register in 1973. Stables, land, 400 acres, 369 presently. Primary crops, vineyard, orchards, and special crops like indigo and sugarcane. Slave cabin. You want to click on it, you open it up, you look at it. This stuff is still here today. Okay. Some of this stuff, like an article that I read and did when I got a lot of pushback on that one. Hold on. Like it's still up on YouTube. I got a lot of pushback, but the owners of the descendants of the original owners are still there today. Right? So it tells you about the slaves, number of slaves in 1860. He owned at least 330 slaves, including those on other plantations, Beach Island, Cedar Grove. It tells you all of this information, but you have to go digging, right? You have to go digging because when you have a lawsuit, just like, I don't want to say her name wrong. What's her name at? Where did your name go? Oh, Tamara, right? Tomorrow is like you, Harvard. You know what I'm saying? You, Harvard, Papa Renti, I'm coming for you, Harvard, right? And so the individuals, I know it would be cumbersome, but to some degree, the footwork needs to be done if one is saying, like, yeah, so that you will have a stronger case. So this is, again, the plantation. It tells you about the buildings. It gives you the pictures. This is on South Carolina. Each state has their own log, okay? You click another one. Pickpocket Plantation. Wow, okay, the name of it was Pickpocket, just for the, hey, why not? It's late. Pickpocket Plantation. This is the big house. Look, even to this day, they're like, do not use the picture without written consent. Ain't that something? Right? Imagine if four parents walking up to this plantation all the time, or whatever the case may be, right? It tells you exactly where it's at. It tells you the origin. It has a lot of missing information, I see. Pickpocket Plantation. Need some more information. Let me go see somebody else who got a little more information here. Rose Hill Plantation. Look at this Jeezy. Ridiculous. The joint looked like a church cathedral. This is Rose Hill. Tells you the parish. It tells you the theories of its origin. It tells you the owner's name. It's privately owned to this day. Some of them, you know what I found? I was like, what? They're now having these plantation weddings where, like they said, it's available for private events. They still have these places and they are renting them out for weddings and all kind of stuff. There was one thing I watched and they still had the place, and the ancestors, they have a claim. If I could still find that video, the ancestors of those who used to be slaves on that plantation still work there today. I was watching somebody did a tour, and they was like, and these people are the ancestors of those who. I'm like, what? See, they got a claim. They got a claim. Like they're still working at the place that their foreparents were enslaved at. I'm not just a claim, one that they can substantiate. Let me say that before people be like, everybody has a claim. No, one that they have like hardcore facts because they admitted that these are the descendants of those that they enslaved. This one says the earliest known date of existence. So this one goes back. There's somebody out there whose foreparents were enslaved at this plantation, Rose Hill Plantation. 1718. It tells you where it's coming from. It tells you down the line. It tells you that when the house was open to public touring. Look at this. 12.5 acres. Had 54 enslaved bodies who were working here. Tells you the history of the building. Right? So these are just some resources that I've found over the years as I do my research that I found helpful. Again, I'm nosy. I might click every single one of these, but I'm not going to. For the sake of time, I got to get up in the morning. So I want to thank everybody for joining, for tuning in. I want to leave on the same note that I started on. The link is in the box. Her name is... Thank you, Baruti. Thanks for joining in. Oh, you can't see? Did you see it? You didn't see it, Jason? Did you see it, or did it Oh wait, you didn't see the plantations? Oh man. I see it now. It was only showing the web browser. All right, let me show y'all one more time. Hold on. Maybe I got too much stuff open. Hold on. Let me just show y'all one more time. My bad. Let me close some of this stuff here. Oh, the last part. All right, I'll show you right now. I thought I clicked the right one. Oh, you know what? It was on the wrong one. Here you go. Let me close that. All right, boom. I was all here by myself. All right, boom. There you go. This is the site, one of them anyway. So let me go back up. This is the site. I clicked South Carolina because, South Carolina, Virginia, New York, but some of the bigger ones, like South Carolina was like one of the richest, if not in the South, because of the port and the amount of bodies that came through South Carolina. So you're going to see some things in South Carolina. So I believe I clicked on Red Cliff, but let me click on Rose Hill. They give you all the plantations that are still operable today. This one is Rose Hill Plantation, right? That's the picture there. They're still telling you do not use without written consent. They're telling you the location, the origin of it, who owned it, who currently owns it. They're talking about private owners, but you can definitely look up who owns it today, see if they're still descendants. Some of these places have been sold out of the hands of those who owned it, and some still possess it. Okay. It tells you the earliest timeline since 1718. It tells you the timeline. So this is because some of these places, this is the front porch, are historical sites. This is the side of it. It's on 12.5 acres. This is some of the inside molding, right? So these are some of the things. Let me go back. I'm gonna click one that I didn't click so I could be surprised with y'all. Hey, look at this, Lauren Hill Plantation. Lauren Hill, oh heck no, what's this? Lauren Hill Plantation. Oh, Lauren Hill Plantation don't even got a thing. This joint is on 390 acres. Okay, let's go back because Lauren don't got no is a double negative. So y'all don't go around saying don't got no. Just pick any one I'm gonna. Let me see. Walnut Grove Plantation. There. It goes a big house. Walnut Grove Plantation. Let's click on it. So you do know it was a Why you brought me over here? I want to stay on the site. Don't play games. Let me get another one. They're playing games with the kid. Oakland Park Plantation. Oh, so you're just not gonna have a picture. Box side is this. Milford Plantation. Why Milford look like the library, Drud? Okay, it's late, y'all. Let's see here. Doing the absolute most. They got the Roman columns and aiding. Okay, this is one of the plantations, y'all. Okay, still here today. Let's go back, shall we? This was, it tells you where it was from. Old Charleston, owners' names. Currently owned by the Classical American Home Preservation Trust and open to the public for tours. Then it tells you the earliest known date in 1839. So again, this is the side of the house. It was on box side. Is that correct? 4,251 acres in 1969 and 400 in 1992 single. Primary crop was cotton. Bloom Hill Cemetery is located on Milford Plantation property, not far from Poinsett Park State. And this is it here. So you might roll up on it and not even realize. It doesn't tell you, I mean, that big of a property. It didn't tell you how many number of slaves. That's interesting. What's this here? Mm-hmm. The house was built by Rhode Island's Nathaniel P. Porter, also designed Susan Manning's brother, and it gives you information. So there was, and when you look at some of these records, these slave masters, these people, there was a contest of who can do the biggest architecture and who could bring in the rarest rugs. And so it was, the money was using for status at those times, right? It was used for where did your silk come from and where did your wallpaper come from, and all of these things. This was kind of, it was all social settings. I read one European narrative that these were the hotels of antiquity. And so you, as well as your quote help, would always have to be ready for whoever may pop in on you. And whoever hosted the guests the most got the most street cred. It was a whole different culture in which melanated bodies helped to not only produce the cotton, but produce the not just cotton, but just all the products. But they help to give off this air of success. But here's another thing that a lot of people are not saying, that a lot of these farm plantation owners, many of them were in debt. Okay, so it was a debt-based society as well, which we might have to talk about at another time. But I'm just look at this last one, Woodburn Plantation. Okay, and who did you go? Did you go to Greece for your inspiration, or Rome for your inspiration? Is it a modern style house? Like all of these things were what the things that they used to grade who was better than who, essentially. Mm-hmm. So then you just scroll down 1800s. It was on 600 acres. No, 8.45 acres, number of acres, 600. And I guess they begin to sell away acres as time goes on. So that, hopefully you was able to see that. Sorry, you didn't see it the last time. And you can just click it at your own leisure. And I think learning helps. I might have to go find where the man said that the person was still there. And then the person walked past on the shot. I was like, what? Like they literally walked past the camera as he's like, and the people are still here. I'm like, what? But anywho, let me see if anybody have any questions or comments. The owners, yes, social competition. Yep, the social competition. Do you think African Americans should seek money as reparations from the U.S. government, private slave institutions? This is what I'm saying, Baruti. According to the research, one has to, like in the case, because here, I don't know all the answers, but I'm just looking at when we wrote about Cali House and those who were going for pensions, they were literally not descendants of slaves. They were actually slaves. And they went to enslaved individuals, and they went to the U.S. government to petition the U.S. government so we have to look at what happened, what didn't happen, what failed, what succeeded anyway, and they went to the government to get kind of this pension, and it didn't happen. Not only didn't happen, we talked a little bit about Marcus Garvey today and Laura Kufi, but before they tried to get Marcus Garvey on mail fraud, like we read a few articles ago, they tried to get Cali House on mail fraud, and they actually trumped up some charges and put her in jail for a year. And slapped her with inciting the quote Negroes, knowing that they are not going to get anything from the government. So in this case, from what I was able to see, is that they went to the government for compensation, and they were actually the persons who were enslaved, and they didn't get the compensation. So then one would have to ask, if they're not getting the compensation for the government, would it have been more advantageous to address the actual owners or those who actually were profiting? What they did try to sue for, as we read in the report, was for the tax that was processed on the cotton at that time, when she did the research, and they tried to sue for that, and they didn't get that either, right? But in this case, we see the Tamara suing Harvard for the use. So she has an actual ancestor, she has an actual charge, you know what I'm saying? And she has an actual name, the person who's currently in possession of this object, which is the picture of her foreparents, right? And so it's very clear. It's not fuzzy. So when we look at a lot of this information, we have to look at, if you're going to approach it, how are you approaching it? Is it a court case? You know what I'm saying? Who are you pointing out? Is it a class action lawsuit? You know what I'm saying? All of these things, I think, based on historical attempts, what may or may not work. I don't know, but I just know what is being shared right now and what are some of the different elements that may not be present. I told y'all that was the last thing, but I'm gonna show y'all a wild thing that I saw some time back. Hold on, let me pull it up so that. And this would have also been possibly a case. However, there were no claimants, right? So this is what I found. A brother was an upholsterer. This is back in 2016, so I'm gonna show you. Okay, this was back in 2016, right? These are like specific cases. And I came across this man who had shared that he was an upholsterer, and someone brought to him this chair. I'm gonna just do the video. And in the chair, it was like an old relic, right? And in the chair, as he was, and I'm gonna put it right here, as he was reupholstering the chair and pulling out the stuff in, what he found was slave hair, like melanated hair. This is him showing the melanated hair in the seating of the chair. So I guess for padding, I don't know what for, but this thing goes viral at the point, right? He's filing melanated hair in stuffed into the chair that a European family had brought into him to reupholster, and this here is the chair. Um, and I guess in speaking to them, they actually wanted the hair restored, and they've had this in their family for hundreds of years, and they wanted this hair put back into the chair. You know what I mean? And so, the question of DNA on the hair, the question of what would possibly be the charge, the question of who this particular family who owns this chair, did they own melanated bodies? And are they having these, you see what I'm saying? Bodies or the hair of this body as relics in the chair. You see the wildness? He's actually pulling out the hair out of the chair. And so I named it the slave hair chair. But these people actually wanted the hair back in the chair and for him to reupholster the chair, which he ended up doing and giving it back to them. So I don't know. This is kind of akin to the case of Tamara, but in her case, she actually is making the claim. But in this particular case, there's no one to make the claim. In the case of Georgetown, there's someone to make the claim for the 200, and I believe it was 82 bodies that were sold, right? And there's actually the accused and the accuser kind of way. If you say the U.S. government, again, in the earlier, it wasn't U.S. government, it was the British who owned. U.S. was a colony or outpost of Britain, right? So then you have to say, okay, so what period of time are we talking about, and what are you looking to do? For instance, like even something that's present day, even something that's right now present day is the situation in Flint, like right now. The situation in Flint concerning the water and the people who were damaged by the water. And those people who are in Flint that's damaged by the water. You remember the slave hair chair, Jason? Yeah, that was crazy. The people who are damaged by the water and understanding that the government knew of this, now they have some type of claim to be able to say, hey, you knew of this and you endangered lives X, Y, and Z. So this is why the commission is important, because it's looking at what are the damages and what area are the damages done. For instance, in the case of medical experiments like Tuskegee, okay, this damage is done and this is the person who did it, and this is the hospital, and this is the organization, and this is but like somebody said, the Henrietta Lacks story is still out there. They made a documentary and everything, and that's still floating out there. So there's a lot going on. What should be the indulgo of reparation, U.S. government package to end wealth gap in America, or acquisition of resources to build Africa for long-term personal health, language, and survey? I mean, that's for the people to sit down and really discuss. I think, Brother Baruti, for the people to sit down and discuss, because as we're learning about the different peoples who are here, everybody doesn't have the same objective. So it's like saying that, people are of this collective, fictive kinship family, and, because one person wants to go back and the other person wants to stay here, then you put all of these, because if you're paying for suffering, then ultimately, the person has the choice to say how they want to interface with their compensation. It's like somebody getting a compensation for whatever injuries. You know what I'm saying? So that becomes a touchy area for some, I think, because they may not always have the same end game in mind. And that's just the reality. Everybody doesn't have the same end game. So one has to sit down and really discuss what the end game is. Some people, again, like I said, it may be an emotional block, not wanting to go back to the continent, not believing that that's the place that may be for the individual. Oh, my ideas be, it's funny. I haven't, I spent so much time just looking at what happened, what is happening, what happened, and that train of thought, that I haven't really gotten to, have this big layout plan. My thing is really just sourcing factual information to the best of my ability and sharing it to the people. I think, as I said the other night, without healing and restoration, which is my mantra, you know, anything that happens is only going to worsen the situation. I'll leave you with this. And as I heard someone talking about, I heard it on one of the discussions, someone talking about money and lottery winners. They have plenty of shows that talk about things being worse after they won the lottery. And I watched one in particular. I forgot the name of it, but the man was named Shakespeare, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. They named him Shakespeare. It was a melanated man, and he was in Florida. And he, he was, working at a barbershop, sweeping up here for some extra money. And one day, the barbershop man realized he wasn't seeing him, the owner of the barbershop. Ultimately, he wins the lottery, right? And in winning the lottery, people start coming out the woodworks and asking him for this. So you never had money to that degree before. You didn't know what to do with it. You didn't know how to manage it. And so ultimately, he gets taken advantage of in different ways. So a European woman takes a liking to him, and she claims that she's going to help him with the monies, right? She's going to help him manage his money. So the time goes on and it goes down the line. Let me see if I can find the Shakespeare story. And Shakespeare disappears, and nobody knows what happened to Shakespeare, right? People are getting a little worried that Shakespeare is disappearing. The mother hasn't heard from him. Nobody has heard from him. Um, Long story short, um, after much investigation, the shop owner, which would have been Shakespeare's friends, has to work in conjunction with the local police to try to get information out of this woman who claimed she was helping him to find out what happened to him. Ultimately, she does him in. She takes him out, and she hid it and buried him under a concrete so that he wouldn't be found, right? So that she can have access to his money. And so I give that little anecdotal story about, and there are plenty of stories about, for all people, not just melanated people, all people who have not been accustomed or not been prepared to handle such responsibility of these monies or whatever it is that they're getting, sometimes, many times, end up in a worse predicament than they were. So I think preparation is important. I think managing of skills and time. Time is the ultimate resource. So people don't realize that sometimes we think that uh, money is more valuable than time. But when time is up, no amount of money can buy it back, right? And so we have to learn how to manage the resources that we do have access to. That's why you see people running around saying time is money. Both of them are a resource. But how do we handle those resources? Do we make the best of it? You know what I mean? And do we value our communications and our relationships? Because there's another saying of people who came and made it out the ghetto, and they say more money, more problems, right? And so, or that money can't buy love and money can't buy happiness and education. One thing, and I keep saying that, but see what happens at night. One thing that I realized in a lot of the narratives out of slavery, because education was held back, then education was lauded as this new idol that should be attained at all costs. And some of the older peoples who were enslaved started to fuss at the new generation. This was in the early 1900s, that they knew nothing of industrious work, that they knew nothing of, because all they thought it was that it was physical bookwork education, right? And so when we think that to solve our problem is just education and it's just money or it's just XYZ, that's not necessarily true, and it's not necessarily the case. So I think that in the time that we have, as people are making strides to whatever they feel they need to make strides towards, that you take the time to tidy up your space. You take the time to prepare. If you think in antiquity, if they knew they were going to the market and they knew that they was going to harvest, then they would take the time before the harvest to make the basket. You know what I mean? To weave the basket and to weave the things that you're going to transport this harvest in. So it only makes sense if people think they're going to get the bag or whatever the thought is, that you prepare to get the bag. You know what I mean? So that's my thoughts. Baruti, maybe I'll come back and share some thoughts off the top of my head. Those are some thoughts that I had. It's about preparation. It's about true cleansing. It's about even to a certain degree understanding. And I know this one is hard because some people be in an attitude with me, but it's okay. Much love anyway. It's understanding what were the psychological and spiritual and emotional, what was the psychological, spiritual, and emotional downfalls or weaknesses on the continent that allowed for the participation in of some in this horrific event. What was the conditions? Because if we don't understand the past, then we won't understand what is to come. So what are some of the conditions? What was the environment? What was the atmosphere that allowed for this type of thing to take place for such a long period of time? Because ultimately, if you get what you say you want to get, and those things that created that environment then are still present now, then history will repeat itself. And I'll leave you with that. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Feel free to share, like, and subscribe, and do all that lovely, nice, beautiful stuff. I'll come back to you, most high willing, at another time. And yeah, one love.